hopefully things will change. Let's talk politics again now. Joining me now is Jason Reed. He's a political commentator. Good evening to you, Jason.
Good evening, David.
Very good to see you again, as always.
Good to see you as well.
So shall we start? I kind of feel this is Groundhog Day. We're going round and round and round and round in circles. So this is essentially, as I said to Peter Cardwell about swinging voters, I didn't mean that, I meant swing voters. So essentially, swing voters don't want Rishi Sunak, they don't want Liz Truss, they want Boris Johnson. This is new research that has come out, and it shows that Johnson remaining as Prime Minister is supported by 49% of Tory supporters, and they feel that actually getting rid of him has damaged the reputation of the party.
There is a very strong constituent of people within the Conservative Party who are loyal to Boris Johnson and didn't want him to go anywhere. But I think that this is, it's easy to read too much into something like this. When Boris Johnson is out of office, which he effectively is now because we're no longer focusing on the policies of his government, it's easy to look back on his premiership with rose-tinted spectacles. And those people who might have said in that poll that they support him, they might have forgotten about some of the things he did in office that they probably disagreed with, like pushing net zero policies in the green agenda, or pushing anti-obesity policies through the nanny state, or the fact that he was in favour of COVID lockdowns, all this kind of thing, which only comes into focus when you're actually in government. Let's not forget, of course, that Boris Johnson, although he hasn't made an endorsement, we understand that he very much prefers Liz Truss over Rishi Sunak, and so Liz Truss winning the contest, which seems extremely likely, and becoming the Prime Minister, that is probably the one thing Boris Johnson wants, second, of course, to staying in office himself. And so we'll have to wait and see what happens over the next few months, for whether he takes any positions publicly against the government and against Liz Truss, or whether he throws his weight behind her. Because I think the likely scenario at the moment is that he throws his weight behind her, he throws his weight behind the government and supports it publicly, which means that presumably all those people who want Boris Johnson to stay in will find themselves supporting Liz Truss anyway.
There's a lot of movement going on, isn't there? I get the sense that people are vying for position. I thought this is a really strange move with Michael Gove supporting Rishi Sunak, and clearly, and I asked John Rentoul this, is he up to something, or what is he up? He's obviously up to something, but what is he up to?
It's difficult to say with a character like Michael Gove. You get the feeling there's some 5D chess going on behind the scenes. You don't quite know what he's planning for, 20 moves into the future. I think a lot of people were surprised earlier in the contest when he backed Kemi Badenoch for the leadership, who of course was seen as an outsider at that point. It was thought likely perhaps that he might support someone who was more likely to win, so that he would be guaranteed a position in the cabinet when they get in. I think it's fair to say that his support of Rishi Sunak is probably genuine. It seems that he genuinely does believe that Rishi Sunak is the best candidate for Prime Minister. He's said very clearly that he doesn't expect to be offered a position in the government, and so he's now has nothing to lose and is just speaking from his heart, if you like. But at the same time, I would be very sceptical if Michael Gove actually was, believing that his time in government was over. I think it's very, very likely he does have his eye on government positions again in the future. He just knows that it won't be immediately. And then if and when Liz Truss does fail, if and when the crises that we're facing this winter do become too much for her, then people like Michael Gove will be able to say, aha, I told you so. I knew that all the way back in 2022, and I told you that Rishi Sunak would have been a better Prime Minister. So maybe there is some manoeuvring going on for some kind of future contest that he will be putting himself in a stronger position. And maybe, we're speculating, but if Rishi Sunak was to run again, he could throw his support behind him earlier and then end up in his cabinet after that.
Do you think that's likely, Rishi Sunak running again?
I don't think it is likely. I think Rishi Sunak is a smart guy. He's a realist. He realises what's going on. I think it was Jeremy Hunt who said earlier this year that you only really get one shot at the leadership. And Jeremy Hunt, of course, was much less successful this time round than he was last time round when he got to the final two. I think there's a degree of truth in that once the members have said no, it seems like they're about to say no quite emphatically to Rishi Sunak. Once the members have said no, there isn't really a way back from that. I think next time round, if there is, we don't know, of course, when the leadership contest will be. We might have Liz Truss as Prime Minister for 20 years, but if there is another leadership contest in the next few years, people like Tom Tugendhat and Kemi Badenoch and maybe even Penny Mordaunt, who came close this time but never got to make their case to the members, those are the people who will be towards the front of the pack. And maybe some old-timers like Michael Gove and Sajid Javid will throw their hat in the ring again.
I mean, in many ways, it's the timing, isn't it? Had this election come earlier, Rishi Sunak would be in an entirely different place.
That's exactly right. Yeah, timing is everything, and that's true of Liz Truss as well and her probable premiership that's upcoming. Of course, everyone wants to be Prime Minister among politicians, but of all the times to become Prime Minister, this is not an optimal one. Liz Truss is going to face a huge amount of difficulties from day one. She's already facing a huge amount of difficulties to deal with the crisis that we're facing, and she's not even in office yet. I think it very much does feel with Liz Truss like she will be Prime Minister either for a very short time or a very long time. It's possible that the crises will prove too much and she won't even make it to the election, but I think it's very likely that she will get through the crisis and then she will be in a really strong position to win the election, because she will get lots of credit for the help that the government undoubtedly is going to have to give out over the next few months in terms of helping people with their energy bills, helping to offset inflation in other ways. There'll be lots of headlines about how many billions of pounds the government is spending. Liz Truss will get credit for her emergency budget that she's going to do as soon as she comes into office. And so if she can play it right, the timing might actually work in her favour.
I mean, it's quite interesting, isn't it? I think he's realised that I think it's game over. He says he still has a shot at Downing Street. He knows, well, we think 80% of those members have voted. It is likely that Liz Truss will win. But if she does win, she's going to have to hit the ground running. She hasn't got long before the general election.
I think you're exactly right. Rishi Sunak knows, he sees what the rest of us see, which is that the Tory party believes in Liz Truss's vision of low taxes and not in Rishi Sunak's vision of high taxes and a big state. She will, as you say, absolutely have challenges from day one. I mean, I think it was 50% of her time now she's spending preparing for government rather than actually campaigning, because there doesn't seem to be much of a need for her to campaign anymore. She seems to have already won the contest, and I would think it's very likely that on day one she will have a plan ready to go. She will have an oven-ready plan, to coin a phrase.
Not that again.
No. As soon as she takes office, she will have all kinds of policies ready to go. Whoever her cabinet ends up being, especially whoever her chancellor ends up being, they will have a lot to say from the get-go about all the things the government needs to be doing immediately to address the crisis. And so although the contest is dragging on for a very long time, I think it's not really having too much of an impact on what the government actually is able to do to help people, because all of the thinking and all of the planning and all of the paperwork that has to be done is being done right now anyway, so that on the 5th of September, when we have a new Prime Minister, probably Liz Truss, she will be able to get on with her agenda straight away.
I mean, I was just sort of on the back of an envelope, just writing down what she's got to do and firefight. She's pretty much going to have to deal with the cost of living, the massive energy price rises. We're seeing inflation, we believe, going to rocket to 18%, something I didn't think I'd see again in my lifetime. We also got the problem of the Northern Ireland Protocol. Now, she's obviously pushed forward that legislation. That will be forthcoming. But clearly, this is not just one problem she's got to sort out. She's going to have to move, and move very quickly.
This is a very good point, and I think this is a big reason why a lot of the Conservative Party has chosen the candidate with a big, bold vision, rather than Rishi Sunak, who comes across a bit sort of managerialist, believing in managed decline and the sensible hat on, all that kind of thing. You need a leader in a time like this with clear vision, who can boldly take a stand and who can weather the criticism and who can deal with all the problems in one fell swoop. Having said that, when you look back actually at recent prime ministers, there was no one who really inherited the government at a time that was convenient. When you look back at Boris Johnson, for example, he was facing that parliamentary deadlock which looked completely insurmountable. And you look before him at Theresa May. She took the mantle after David Cameron resigned, having just lost the referendum. Theresa May, of course, having campaigned for Remain. Both of them, you might say, failed in different ways. Theresa May failed to pass Brexit. Boris Johnson succeeded with Brexit and got his election victory, but then failed to keep the support of his party. Liz Truss will have to do what both of them failed to do. She will have to deal with a lot, as you say, all at the same time. There's going to be a lot of pressure on her from all directions. We're going to hear a lot of stories stories this winter about how much people are struggling to pay their energy bills. We're going to hear about people having to choose between heating their homes and putting food on the table. And Liz Truss is going to have to weather that. But I think if she can weather that over the next few months, if she can get to the spring, if she can get to Easter, she will be in a much stronger position then to be forward-looking and to be looking towards the next election rather than just firefighting and putting out problems as they emerge.
Jason, we only have 2 weeks to go. I can't wait. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. That's Jason Reed, who is a political commentator. After the